Happy Halloween, everyone! I hope you're gonna have a really fun day, and I hope you're going to enjoy this video. If you've been following me for a little while, you've probably noticed that I've been uploading shorts every single day of October. And just in case you haven't watched these shorts, I actually partook in Inktober this year, and I made all my videos themed around Pokemon. It's been 2 years since I last did Inktober, and this year has been a lot more challenging and exhausting for me because I had a lot more to do, but I think it was worth it. I think some of the pictures I drew ended up being very cute, and this video is going to be a little recap of my entire Inktober experience this year, and of course I'm going to show you all the pictures that I drew. This year I didn't really have a lot of time to prepare and brainstorm what I wanted to do for the Inktober, but as usual I made my own list because that really helps me to stay motivated and keep going and going, because Inktober can be pretty exhausting. As much as I love art and drawing, kind of having to force myself to draw in addition to editing and uploading videos every single day, it is very different compared to just spontaneously doing it every now and then. And of course, because there were news about the new Pokemon game coming out, which is out by now, I too was very hyped about Pokemon, and I already love drawing Pokemon. As you've probably seen, I've been doing quite a few Pokemon themed videos lately. So making my Inktober Pokemon themed, or in this case, Pokeween themed, just kind of made sense to me. But just simply drawing a Pokemon every single day feels like a wasted opportunity, because even though it is called Inktober and it's just a pun on October, I feel like me and probably most people associate October with Halloween. So of course I wanted the whole series to be Halloween themed. So I decided to dress up all my Pokemon in something Halloween themed. And even before I started drawing, I actually planned out a color palette that I wanted to work with. Inktober somehow always feels like a bit of a special occasion, so I didn't want my art to just look like my art does every single day. And it still very much looks like my art, but I decided to do something very innovative and very out there, and instead of using black pens for the line art, I went out and bought brown pens. It sounds really silly, but it was a big deal for me because I've been wanting brown pens for my outlines for like years at this point. There's not a lot of choice when it comes to brown fine liners that are also waterproof, which I need because I use alcohol markers a lot, and sometimes I use watercolors. And then of course, to top it off, I couldn't find a brown pen that was the same thickness as the pens that I usually use. So that was a little frustrating, but everything turned out fine in the end. So now that I've told you about what happened within my 3 days of prep time, let's actually jump to the 1st of October and talk about the first Pokemon I drew. For the very first day, I specifically chose a theme for which I could draw Drifloon, because Drifloon is always at the top of creepiest Pokemon lists. So I thought it's like perfect to start off my Pokeween Inktober. And also in addition to that, I just really like Drifloon. I think it's a fun little pleasing design. But as I'm looking through my collection of drawings, my Drifloon picture actually looks like the least inspired one, which is kind of because at this point I wasn't really sure if I wanted to dress up the Pokemon or how I wanted to dress them up or what I really wanted to do with them. And also Drifloon is basically just a balloon, so there also wasn't much room to dress it up. And it basically just ended up with 2 cute little bows that have bat patterns on them. The next day the theme was Moonlight. And throughout the entire month with all the pictures, sometimes I took the themes very literally and sometimes not so much. So for Moonlight, I chose to draw a Teddy Ursa because it has a moon on its forehead. Very simple. There were a lot of other Pokemon I could have drawn for Moonlight, but since I've already drawn most of them, I wanted to draw one that I hadn't drawn before. And that is also kind of a hidden theme that goes along throughout the entire series, because I am trying to draw every single Pokemon that exists at least once, and I already have an entire video where I'm explaining what my goal is. But basically because of that, for the Inktober, I also tried to focus on Pokemon that I haven't drawn before, which is kind of why sometimes my choices might seem a little odd. And on the other hand, I am drawing 4 Pokemon on a single A4 page, which means I have about an A6 kind of square size left per drawing. So I kind of had to focus on Pokemon that are not too detailed, because otherwise I would have a little bit of a struggle, as my line art is kind of thick on a scale this small. For day 3, the theme was skeleton. And yes, there are some Pokemon that literally carry bones around with them. But I felt like being a little creative and I drew Shedinja because I really love this Pokemon and just kind of wanted to draw it. There's something oddly pleasing about its kind of angelic shape, and also the way it evolves is really cool. But it's only day 3 and it's already the second Pokemon that I can't really dress up. So I kind of just ended up giving it some sort of like jester cape. I have no idea what to call it, but it's a costume to a certain degree. For day 4, the theme was candy, and I was so tempted to draw a Swallow because I kind of just really love Pokemon that are just a ball of goo. But I feel like it's a very unpopular Pokemon, and there are a lot of other Pokemon that also really like to eat or eat a lot, or they're literally mimicking or looking like they're made out of candy. So I went for plan B and drew Munchlax instead. And of course, it needs a piece of candy to munch on. Day 5, the theme was witch, and in my personal opinion, there are a few Pokemon that might not necessarily look like a witch, but they kind of still fit the witch aesthetic or the witch vibes, or based on the Pokedex, they kind of do witchy things. But I still ended up drawing Hatterene, the most witch-looking Pokemon there is. And with Hatterene, there was a problem that I had with quite a few Pokemon, and usually I try to avoid those Pokemon, but it was kind of too late with the Hatterene picture. And that is that this Pokemon looks like it's already wearing a full outfit. It's already wearing a witch hat, and it's already wearing a dress, and it has like something that looks like fancy long hair. So how do I accessorize it, right? So I'm kind of just added another dress on top of the dress that she's already kind of wearing. For day 6, the theme was slime, and as much as I hate anything that's even remotely slimy in real life, I really love the aesthetic of slime-themed monsters and creatures. But because I love slime creatures so much, I already happen to have drawn pretty much all the other slimy Pokemon before. And technically I've also drawn Sliggoo before, but I wasn't too happy with the old pictures, so I thought, why not draw it again? Also, it fit really nicely into the little format I have on my page. And I saw these glasses these like Batwing shaped glasses that I really wanted to draw. So of course Sliggoo got them, and now it's a very smart Halloween Pokemon. For day 7, the theme was zombie, and I was actually really surprised by how few zombie themed Pokemon there are. I genuinely expected more, but there's basically only Parasect. If you haven't read the Pokedex entries for Parasect before, then you might be a little confused, but Parasect is inspired by something that happens in real life, where a bug basically gets mind controlled by a fungus infection. And that's what's happened to Parasect. That's kind of what makes it a zombie, because, you know, it's basically dead, but it's still moving around. And also a lot of other people seem to call it a zombie Pokemon, so I just kind of went with it. Now, Parasect also has a shape that is very hard to dress up, so I just kind of threw some chains on it, some skulls, and called it a day. Admittedly, not my best work, and kind of to make up for it, I also threw in some pieces of candy that I can snack on. Day 8, the theme was night, and of course there were quite a few Pokemon that, not necessarily their designs, but their Pokedex entries are kind of themed around night, or they like reference night, or the Pokemon are nocturnal, which also works for the night theme. And Duskull won, because I really like Duskull. And also, quite a lot of the other night themed Pokemon are a lot more detailed or wide. In white, Pokemon are kind of hard to fit into my frame. And also, just like why I didn't draw Lunatone for Moonlight, I also didn't draw Lunatone for Night, because I've already drawn a picture of Lunatone, which I quite like, and Duskull's just way cuter than Lunatone. Duskull's outfit is incredibly simple as it's just a little hat, but I've been wanting to draw this hat like for an entire week. I really wanted to draw it, but I didn't really have any Pokemon where I could place this hat upon their head because they had some sort of protrusions coming out. But Duskull doesn't. Duskull does have a little wiggly thing on its head, but I assume it's kind of soft and moldable, so it can just bend back its little thing and place a hat on top of it. In hindsight, I would have definitely colored in Duskull's hat in a different color though, because I feel like it's basically just made up of two colors and it feels a little too monochrome for my liking. And also the orange and the darker orange that I use are just slightly too similar. So maybe the dark yellow for the hat would have looked better. Day 9, the theme was costume. And yes, Mimikyu is the most obvious choice because Mimikyu is quite literally wearing a costume. But there's also some other Pokemon that might not be wearing literal costumes, but they do look as if they are wearing costumes. And then there were pictures and videos floating around of the new Mega for Hawlucha. I never liked this Pokemon until the very first time that I had to draw it. And then it just kind of somehow managed to weasel its way into my heart. Its design is a little goofy, as it is a bird that looks like a man wearing a wrestling costume. And I kind of love the Mega form because the Mega form is basically just a fancier version of the costume that it's already wearing. Which, by the way, I've also drawn the Mega Hawlucha. And even though Hawlucha is like a very humanoid looking Pokemon, because of the wings I wasn't sure how to dress it up, and because of the framing of my picture I couldn't have Hawlucha spread out its wings, but instead I had to find a pose where the wings kind of cover up its body just so it kind of fits into the vertical rectangle, which means the wings covered up even more of its body. And admittedly, Hawlucha is wearing my least favorite costume out of all of the pictures that I drew, as it's just wearing some gloves and a scarf, and those accessories also really don't match the vibe of the Pokemon, which is kind of upsetting to me. But I remember already being quite stressed the day I drew this. So I guess it just is what it is. There's nothing I can change now, but maybe one day I'll draw Hawlucha in a very pretty Halloween costume just to kind of redeem myself. Day 10, the theme is fangs, and as you can imagine, there is countless Pokemon that have fangs. So I tried to narrow it down a little to Pokemon where the Pokédex entry specifically talks about the Pokemon's fangs. And there were still a lot of Pokemon left. But in the end I went for Cavania because I feel like this Pokemon very rarely gets any love. And it also looked like really fun to draw since I've never drawn it before. And you know what I did? I dressed up this very 90s masculine looking Pokemon in the cutest little witch hat that I could think of. To be fair, the witch hat design is kind of simple, but there is a few bows and lace and frills and everything that's adorable. And that paired with the grumpy face of the Cavania, just it's really funny cute. And it's also my boyfriend's favorite out of all the Pokemon that I've drawn. I don't think it's my favorite, but it's definitely one of my favorites. Day 11, the theme is Mommy, and once again, I decided I didn't want to go with the obvious sarcophagus Pokemon Cofferegus. I hope I said that right. I always mess up its name. But Dusclops is the Pokemon I choose, and Dusclops, its body is basically hollow and it's made out of whatever kind of material, but the material looks like money wrappings to me, or at least it always did since I was a little kid. I also think Dusclops is absolutely terrifying, which kind of fits the Halloween theme as well. And since Dusclops only has one eye, I thought it would be really funny to accessorize it with more eyes. In hindsight, I should have probably not drawn Dusclops for Mommy though and saved it for the Cyclops theme that shows up later. But don't worry, when we get to it, the Cyclops Pokemon looks amazing. Then day 12, my theme was mask. I think it makes a lot of sense because a lot of kids wear masks on Halloween. And again, there's quite a surprising amount of Pokemon that kind of look like they're wearing masks. I mean, Yamask is not really wearing it, it's just carrying the mask. But I still put it on the list because it quite literally has a mask. But then from all the other Pokemon that just look like they have a mask, I decided to go for Roserade because it's a very nostalgic Pokemon to me. And it's not like the other Pokemon that I consider are bad, but a lot of them, I actually think a lot of them are really ugly. So Roserade it is. And Roserade already again looks like it's wearing a very nicely balanced outfit, which I kind of had to ruin with some goofy little Halloween accessories. I did put myself as a rule that I didn't want to change the shape of any Pokemon. Like, I literally wanted those Pokemon to be wearing costumes. I didn't want to, like, make it look like the Pokemon itself looks different. But I was a bit at a loss for Roserade. It got a choker, it got some pants, but it just didn't look like enough. So I did actually end up changing the shape of its mask and added a pumpkin inside of its flower head, which is breaking my own rules. But also I never wrote down those rules, so sue me, I guess. Now day 13 is where I probably should have drawn Dusclops, but look at how cute this clown Magnemite is. Trying to put emotions into a Pokemon like Magnemite was an odd experience, but I think I nailed it. I'm pretty confident I did a good job here. And the clown costume just looks adorable on it. I never thought I'd call this Pokemon cute, but it looks so cute as a goofy little clown. And it's so happy too. Day 14, the theme was Scarecrow, and I basically only had 2 Pokemon as an option, which are Maractus, which I did draw, and Nocturne, which people tend to refer to as a Scarecrow Pokemon, but I think Maractus's Pokedex entry sounds a lot more like a Scarecrow than Nocturne's. And also, Maractus is really cute, and I was playing one of the old Digimon games while I was drawing this, and Maractus just really looks like a Digimon, so I was a little influenced there. Because Maractus already looks like a really cute little girly girl, I decided to also give it a bit of a girly girl accessory with a little handbag and some bat-shaped hair ties and a cute little friendly pose. Day 15, the theme was orange, and I didn't add the theme of orange just to draw Pumpkaboo, but I did really want to draw Pumpkaboo, yet I didn't add pumpkin as a theme, so I kind of had to draw it for orange. There were a few other Pokemon that could have worked, but I really wanted to draw a Pumpkaboo. It's a Halloween-themed Inktober. I have to draw Pumpkaboo somewhere. And this Pokemon doesn't usually smile, but I really wanted to draw it smiling. Day 16, the theme was Carnivorous Plant, and as much as I wanted to draw a Trevenant or Carnivine, I ended up going with one of the most iconic Gen 1 Pokemon, which is Victreebel. Partially because I love Victreebel's Mega. I think Victreebel's Mega is one of my favorite Megas. Not just from all the new ones, but just in general because I love that goofy design, and I've recently in the past few weeks, I've drawn so many Victreebels and Mega Victreebels. I feel like one more Victreebel can't harm anyone, right? But also Victreebel's not really the best candidate for accessorizing or dressing up, so I kind of just ended up with a few more random bows. Day 17, the theme is Vampire, and I guess I could have just gone for any bat, but I decided to go for a bat that drinks blood. But I also considered to draw Gorbis, because Gorbis also uses its pointy snoot to like poke other creatures and drink its blood, which I thought was interesting because I didn't expect this Pokemon to do that. But I've already drawn a very pretty Gorbis illustration in the past, so I felt like it's time to give a different Pokemon the limelight. And Gliscor looks a lot like a vampire in my opinion. But then I thought about it and I really wanted to draw Gliscor, but like I really wanted to draw a very nice, hopefully high quality illustration of this Pokemon. So I decided to save it for later and draw Crobat instead. Crobat is of course not the bad Pokemon. I love Crobat. I think its design is really cool, but it might have ended up being the goofiest looking picture that I drew during the entire month of October. It was like the day of drawing this, or like a day before or something, I saw these really goofy Halloween glasses and I just had to draw them on someone. And unfortunately Crobat ended up having to take one for the team. I did kind of gave it some leg warmers to match just to balance out the spider webbing design, but it kind of just ended up making everything so much goofier. Day 18, the theme was hero. And if you're confused, it's because a lot of kids dress up as heroes for Halloween. Again, if you just base the hero theme on the Pokédex entries, there are a lot of Pokemon that you could kind of interpret as a hero theme, as quite a few Pokédex entries talk about Pokemon that protect their own kind or like their pre-evolutions. And I think that's pretty heroic. But I ended up going with the obvious route and drew Palafin in its hero form. What I didn't think about is, once again, how do I put a costume on a Pokemon that's already wearing a costume? So I just didn't give it a costume, and instead I covered it in skeleton-like body paint and gave it a little boo basket for trick-or-treating. For day 19, the theme was face paint, because again, I feel like a lot of people do get their face painted for Halloween. It just makes sense to me. And at first I thought about drawing a Pokemon that looks like it's wearing face paint, because I feel like there's quite a few that do. Obstagoon or Runerigus kind of being the most obvious ones, I guess. But I decided to go for Smeargle because 1, I really like Smeargle. 2, I've never drawn a Smeargle before. And 3, it's a painter-themed Pokemon. I feel like Smeargle would also be good at painting on people's faces. And I know there's another Pokemon that likes to paint stuff everywhere, but that Pokemon really creeps me out, so that was not even an option for me. So I drew a cute little Smeargle, and as it's day 19, I was also kind of starting to run out of ideas for accessories and costumes. And Smeargle also ended up with body paint to kind of imitate a Frankenstein monster look. When I colored it in, I also made the mistake of accidentally coloring in Smeargle's hat-shaped head, which is actually the same color as its body, but somehow, because it looks like a hat, it just seemed like it should have a different color. So that was a mistake, but since it's about wearing Halloween costumes, I think I can kind of get a pass on that. I think in the shirt that I posted, I also asked, would you get your face painted by Smeargle? And only later did I realize that in some Pokédex entries, it actually clarifies that Smeargle uses its body fluids to paint. I don't think anyone should get their face painted by Smeargle anymore unless it's using a different type of paint. Day 20, the theme was claws, and just like fangs, there are a lot of Pokemon that have claws, so once again, I tried to focus on the Pokédex entries that mention claws, and there were, once again, still a lot of Pokemon left that have Pokédex entries talking about their claws. There were also a few Pokemon where the Pokédex entry was talking about claws, even though it really didn't look like the Pokemon would have claws. But you could also argue that Carania's fangs are really small for fangs. Anyway, I drew Sneasel because Sneasel is one of my all-time favorite Pokemon, more so than Weavile. And I decided to draw a female Sneasel for once because in the past I've only ever drawn male ones, since the male one has a longer ear and I think that just looks way prettier. But saying that feels kind of rude, so female Sneasels deserve a little more love from me. And this one is a little diva, and I wanted to accessorize her in a way that's elegant, but with a little spice. So she got flowers, but also combined with little batwing bows while she's showing off her fresh manicure. Day 21 is Clown, and initially I put Clown on the list, not just because it's a bit of a common costume, but also because I really wanted to draw Blacephalus, you know, that clown-themed ultra piece with a really complicated name. But by the time I reached day 21, I realized that this ultra beast that I wanted to draw is just too detailed and there's no way I would be able to do it justice. So instead I drew Mime Jr., which yes, technically there's a mime in the name, but it definitely looks like a traditional clown. And I mean, mimes are basically a type of clown, right? But Mime Jr. is really cute, and of course, since it's a little baby, it needs a trick-or-treating basket. Again, in hindsight, something that would have changed about the design. I probably should have just left its like body skin tone blank instead of coloring it in yellow. Like, yes, it is a very light pink, but I think the overall picture would look better if I just left it white. Because now there's so much yellow going on that it's a little harder to discern everything separately. Then for day 22, the theme was horns, and just like claws and fangs, there were a lot of Pokemon I could have chosen from, and I was this close. I was this close to pick Weedle, but my boyfriend kind of talked me out of it and I drew Shuppet instead. To be fair, Shuppet looks a lot more Halloweeny than Weedle does. Although I do think bugs are really, really terrifying, but a floating shadow puppet would probably also be quite terrifying. That weird head protrusion on Shuppet's head is, in fact, according to Pokédex, a horn. I personally would not have called it a horn, although I guess it does fit the definition of a horn. But I've mentioned this in the short, but it just kind of looks like a Tom and Jerry style bump on its head. I still love Shuppet, but calling it a horn just feels kind of weird. Anyway, once again, a body that does not offer a lot of options for me to accessorize or costume it, but I gave it a little cape with like little wings and some devil horns. Because Shuppet likes to feast on the emotions. They're not exactly nice emotions. So adding a little devil theme, I think it works. Then for 23, the theme was autumn. And I could have drawn one of the two deers that match the seasons and just drawn the like autumn fall version of it, but I didn't really want to draw a deer that day, so instead I drew Whimsicott. If you watch one of my older sketchbook tours, I think it's the Pink Marie one, you will see that I've covered like entire pages just with this one Pokemon because it's so cute and it's really simple to draw, but also it's really fun to draw. I really enjoy drawing the like fluffy cotton hair and everything. And if you're wondering what it has to do with autumn, for one, it looks cozy, but more than that, autumn is the harvesting season for cotton, so I think that makes sense to draw a cotton-themed Pokemon. Day 24, the theme is Spectre. The theme should have technically been Spirit, but I forgot to change the word before I uploaded the first video. So Spectre it is! Spectre, Spirits, Ghosts, they're all kind of the same thing, right? So since I didn't get to draw a Trevenant earlier, I decided that now I want to draw a Phantom, which is also just straight up adorable. It's kind of terrifying and sad if you look into the Pokédex entries for it, but visually it's really adorable. And I kind of wanted to lean into the childishness of this Pokemon and give it like a bedsheet ghost costume. But then I thought it would really be a shame to cover up its face because, I mean, that tree stump kind of head is what kind of makes this Pokemon. There's not much else to it. So covering it up would have been kind of a waste, and it probably would have been really hard to recognize. So instead, I gave it more of like a poncho with a hoodie. So if it wanted to, it could put up the hoodie and then it has something resembling a bedsheet ghost costume. And of course, because it's a cute little baby Pokemon, it needs a piece of candy. Day 25, the theme is Living Doll, and there were a few Pokemon I could have chosen from, but I actually kind of expected there to be more. When I was looking for Pokemon for this theme, I wasn't specifically looking for Pokemons that are dolls necessarily, but kind of fit the theme of a living doll. So like an inanimate object that came to life. But there weren't as many Pokemon as I expected. And when I narrowed it down, it really was a head-to-head with Bennett and Claydol. Claydol's design absolutely terrifies me, which is kind of why I wanted to draw it. But I also really like Bennett's design. And I've drawn a Shuppet earlier this week, so Bennett won. I wasn't really sure how to dress it up, but I did kind of try to match its outfit at least a little bit to the Shuppet's outfit. Although at the same time, I didn't just want to give it the exact same costume pieces. And Bennett has a face that is very recognizable and very cool. And I think its face kind of saved this whole picture for me. Then for day 26, the theme is Werewolf. And I mean, there's a few wolf-y looking Pokemon. But once again, I went with the most obvious one, which is Lycanroc's Midnight form. Like, you cannot tell me this is not supposed to look like a werewolf. And since wolves are dogs and dogs like bones, I decided to accessorize them with a bunch of bones. For day 27, the theme was Trick or Treat, and I didn't really want to take trick or treat super literally, but I more so wanted to go for the act of trick or treating, which young kids often do with their parents or older siblings. So I wanted to focus more on a family theme when I picked the Pokemon for this day. And there are a few Pokemon that carry around their little ones, but I went for Mousehold because from all the like kind of family themed Pokemon, I think Mousehold might be my favorite. I think Mousehold Mousehold is by far the best thing that came out of Scarlet and Violet. Although Tinkerton is also very up there for me. But Mousehold is just so lovely and cute. And I have drawn Mousehold before, but there can never be enough Mousehold. And I wanted to dress up the kids in like really goofy Halloween costumes and then have the parents have like something that matches. But that is not necessarily a costume because, you know, they're just here to chaperone their kids, right? So I gave them matching Halloween sweaters instead. Since I didn't focus on any tricks for trick or treat, I also decided to add pranks for day 28 as a theme. And oh boy, are there a lot of Pokemon that like playing pranks. And I decided to draw Rotom because I really like Rotom. And Rotom actually showed up a lot of my possible Pokemon throughout this entire month. But it never really made the cut, so I thought, now's the time. Now's the time to get a Rotom in here. And I think it was absolutely worth it because Rotom is a beautiful, cute little Pokemon that plays a lot of pranks. And it changes up its pranks depending on what household item it's possessing. And then I realized that Rotom is really hard to dress up and accessorize again because Rotom doesn't even really have a body anymore. But I also really don't want Rotom to just possess like a costume item. I wanted the accessories to remain accessories on Rotom rather than Rotom turning into an accessory. And so a giant spiderweb bow it is. Now we are getting to an end. We are on my last page dedicated to Inktober. And day 28, the theme was Alien. Since I've drawn Elgyem before, which I quite like, I was also very tempted to draw a Behiam. Those are two alien Pokemon from Gen 5. But I ended up taking the more obvious route of drawing an Ultra Beast, which are also very alien. And from the Ultra Beast, it was a head-to-head for me between Poipole and Nihilego. I love Nihilego's design. It's so pretty. And I really love how it looks so much like Lily. I'm so close to finishing Inktober and I've already struggled trying to figure out how to dress up Pokemon so many times. And how would I dress up Nihilego, right? So I went for Poipole instead, which it's still an adorable little Ultra Beast. So I do not regret drawing it, but I might still have to draw Nihilego at some other time. I also really had no idea of how to dress up this Pokemon, so I ended up giving it another like vampire-inspired outfit, cape, neck thing. Because I think it's been long enough since the last time I drew a vampire-inspired costume. I think it's fine to have a few more doubles now. And for day 30, the theme was black, since I've already had the theme of orange. And black and orange are like the most Halloween color combinations ever. Black also had to be a theme. And the blackest Pokemon that I could think of was Roly-Poly. And I do talk about this in my short, but I dressed up this Pokemon in what is intended to be a dog costume in real life. I think it looks cute. I think this Pokemon kind of pulls it off. It looks super grumpy, but I'm sure deep down it loves the costume. And then we finally made it to day 31, where the theme is princess. Just like the hero theme, I added princess as a theme because a lot of kids love dressing up as princesses. And I made this theme last because I love super cute girly stuff. So princess is my favorite theme on this entire list, and I really wanted to save it for last so I have something to look forward to at the end. And there were so many Pokemon that I could have drawn, and I really wanted to draw for the princess theme. There are so many princess and queen like and just regal Pokemon out there, but I went for a classic, which is Jinx. I love Jinx. Jinx is a little ugly, but I love her because back in Gen 1, she seemed like the most feminine Pokemon to me, and I have always been obsessed with hyper femininity. So Jinx was really appealing to me when I was little, and it kind of just really burned itself into my memory and into my heart. I will forever have a soft spot for Jinx. And let's be fair, Jinx is a very princessy Pokemon. And I am willing to give her all the power to rule over any sort of icy frosty lands within the Pokemon universe. I'm sure she'll do just fine. And with that, my Inktober of 2025 comes to an end. This is the end of my Pokeween Inktober. I am exhausted. This was so much extra work to do for me this month. But I did gain quite a few new followers through my shorts, which is really nice. And I don't know if this translates into people watching my longer form videos, but if you are, hi! I'm really glad that you're here and I really hope you're enjoying my content still. And I hope you're gonna stay around for a little while, even if I'm not drawing Pokemon every day. I hope you enjoyed my Inktober. I hope you enjoyed this compilation video right here. And I already have next week's video planned and I really hope to see you there, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, then please consider to like, comment, subscribe. It would make me very, very happy. And it's gonna make me feel like all of this was worth it. So thank you very much for watching and goodbye.